Welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Spencer Locker.
And me, James Cooper.
James, how are you doing, man?
I'm very good. How are you, Spencer?
I'm very good, thank you very much. Another year down the road now.
Oh!
I'm an old man now. Well, not that I wasn't an old man yesterday, but, you know.
Spence, I don't think you give yourself enough credit. You don't look the age of an old man, and I don't think you feel that way either, do you?
No. But just on that subject, the end is nigh.
The end
is nigh.
Right, okay.
Are you familiar with the concept of a post-mortem?
Yes.
So the point I'm trying to make here is, do we recognise signs that things may not all be as it seems or as it should be? Or maybe we start looking at why things could possibly fail?
Okay.
And then change them before we get to that inevitable end. Some things are meant to fail.
Yeah.
Okay. And through that failure, then the purpose of that failure would be to establish what it was that failed, and so on and so on. That's great. But unfortunately, many people, many organisations and businesses haven't got the luxury of that. They haven't got the luxury of driving something until it fails and then go, right, okay, then so let's have a look and let's pick it apart. Well, we want to win. We want to succeed. We want our people to be happy. So what are the signs that things are not going as they should? This is the thing. We can sometimes not possibly keep our eye on the ball. Maybe we'll take our eye off the ball, and before we know it, things are falling down. It may be that people have got issues or concerns, distractions, whatever it is, that actually we might not address what we need to address or see the signs or symptoms of a demise or failure. What are stay interviews? Why would you do them? Who would you conduct them with? Talk to me, James. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think, first of all, you need to look in all directions.
Mm.
So use your eyes. Have a look to your left. Have a look to your right. Look above to the leaders and who you directly report into, and look below to the people that might even be reporting into you.
Yeah.
I think cover all angles and measure the impact that it has all ways, all directions. Because if I'm in that position where, for example, you're reporting into me. So anybody that's either deputy leader of a team, assistant to a leader of a team, or even just within your peer group, the little check-ins could be happening around lunch. It could be very informal. But if we talk about conducting a stay interview, are we staying formal? Can it be done around a coffee cup, for example? Or is it something that has to be recorded and done in the detail that it requires? My personal opinion is it can be both.
Mm-hmm.
It can. I think there's value in the conversations that you have when it's like we've done today, Spencer. Little conversation, little topic. We've spoke about something that's very specific to us. We've had this conversation on a number of occasions. If it went to formal, I don't think we'd necessarily need to do that. It's good as is. But I appreciate the time, I appreciate the effort, I appreciate your consideration for the questions that you've asked and I've asked you, and the answers that we've both given each other. This doesn't have to be groundbreaking stuff. It could be something as a little check-in. Or, if you like, it could be the key milestones for you to actually understand. Again, look into your team if you've got a larger number of people within your team. What makes them tick and why they're still in this organisation?
I love that. It really sort of opened my eyes to that casual encounter where as you said, over a coffee cup. I like regular sized cups, mate.
Yeah. There's a lot getting packed into it.
But yeah, I think we've got to have that casual thing. But as you said, I think you've got to keep your head on a swivel. I think you've got to be able to be looking around. You've got to have a level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Because those people who are happy and are staying, well, one day they might not be happy. And you've got to make sure that you spot that. Because if you spot that, then you can head it off at the pass.
Hmm.
What are they bringing to the party? I mean, we could reference the change house model that we talk about when managing change. May very well be in the exit lounge, but beforehand they weren't in the exit lounge. So now I've got to make a decision. Do I want to keep this talent? Do I want to keep this particular person? We could reference the situational leadership model that we talk about, where we talk about people being in the nurture zone. Am I nurturing my people? Am I pace setting my people? Am I coaching and developing my people? One of the reasons why I might not be nurturing that talent is because I'm not paying them attention, because I'm focused on everybody else in the journey zone and the investment zone, and because if I'm focusing on them, then that person there who I'm not nurturing, well, they might be going out the door. So again, this is when we start talking about exit interviews and things like that. It doesn't necessarily mean there's a grudge or there's a problem. It may very well be that somebody's just gone, you know what, I'll give you a promotion, I'll give you a substantial pay rise, and they go, I'm not getting that here. So yeah. So it doesn't have to be a big fallout.
Yeah.
It's just but actually it's maybe not something that you're doing wrong, although you are nurturing me. You're not nurturing me as a talent, but they are.
So would we talk about the ability to hear what someone is saying to you and maybe take away the ambiguity, not make assumptions?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. It's definitely that hearing rather than just listening and interpreting it in your way. Yeah.
And I think you can make links to those organisational goals, can't you?
Yeah. I think if we can align with the organisational goal, so we can see what that organisational goal is, and our personal needs align with that, then yeah, absolutely, we can recognise it. But the thing is, it might very well be that you recognise the organisational goal and you align with it, but then you're looking around and nobody else is. So you might be sort of sat there thinking, well, I'm doing all the heavy lifting. So what is it that, well, those people over there being rewarded for doing nothing, whereas I'm the one who's doing all the heavy lifting, and I'm not necessarily getting that reward or recognition so yeah. Okay. So it may very well be that somebody, if you've got the stay interview, somebody who's prepared to stay but is possibly teetering on the edge of not staying, okay, so that might be how we structure some of these questions we're going to talk about.
Okay, so looking at question number 1, what do you enjoy about your role? So if we pitch these questions going, actually, what is it? We get enough people when you start to get into a conversation. A lot of people, just because of who they are and the way that they're built, will focus on the potential negatives or some of the things that might stop them from achieving that enjoyment and enjoying their working life, relationships, interpersonal, professional relationships, by the way, and even maybe the job that they do on a regular basis. Understanding what do you enjoy about your role? Well, what are the potential answers that we could get from that? Well, they're typically individually specific, right?
Yeah.
My point is, why would we ask that question though, Spencer?
Because, again, if we're looking at a situation where you're getting a little bit of staff churn, it may very well be that you've got some people who are steadfast, who aren't kicking off, who aren't actually leaving the organisation. There might be long-term people there. So if these people are leaving and we're doing exit interviews, well, what about the people who are staying? Why are you staying? What enjoyment? Yeah. So we're talking about enjoyment. What do we enjoy about the job? Not asking you what you're good at, which we will be talking about a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm asking you about what do you enjoy doing. So let me ask you that question. What do you enjoy about your job?
I think I mentioned this in most workshops. Why do you do what you do? Well, I enjoy the bit I enjoy about my role is all of the different levels of engagement in different organisations. No day is ever the same, and the challenge is different because the people change so much. And it's actually a really nice. The bit I maybe love a little bit more is once we've delivered what we said we was going to deliver in the way that we said we were going to deliver it, and you can see it on people's, or you can see it through people's actions, that they have got something from the content that we've delivered in a workshop, one-to-one coaching, whatever it is, and they have actually got a positive or an impact, an influence, positive, negative, or indifferent. But something has changed, something has been tweaked, something has happened, and it's then had a positive impact on their enjoyment of their role, that's when I get a kick.
Yeah.
When you win, I win.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. It's a bit V and V, isn't it? It's a variables, a variation and value.
Yeah.
So I mean, as you sort of alluded to there, you could go through a working week, and on a Monday you could work with a NHS cohort.
Yeah.
It could be
board of directors
from Specsavers or whatever. Third day it could be fire and rescue. Fourth day it could be a construction firm. Fifth day it could be a bankers. Yeah, you've got the variety, haven't you?
Yeah,
You've got the variety of people, of service users, delegates, but you've also got that value there, because you know that what you've done and what you've dropped and they've picked up is valuable.
Yeah.
And particularly when it comes to that second engagement, that subsequent engagement, and there's a buzz about the room, and you start reflecting on what happened in the intervening period between the last engagement and this engagement. It's amazing the variety of different sort of things that you call value.
And I think even from just asking the question of what do you enjoy most about your role, you could get into the nitty-gritty of that, because other people that outside of the room and the conversation could, just by not being nasty people or not understanding you, it could be that they actually, I get you. You're in this because the money, when it technically is not. It's not about, obviously everybody would like to earn a wage, by the way.
Yeah.
And what we find is most people, in high roles and responsibilities, there would become a higher wage bracket. But understanding is, what do you actually enjoy about it might be a slightly different conversation.
Yeah.
Because, again, when the survey here on the left is going well, people will put up with some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it deep dives into that. Okay, what is it that's actually working for you at the moment? What is the bit that you enjoyed the most?
Yeah.
Because if I then know that in a stay interview, I'm going on then. Just make sure we could potentially drop a little bit of pressure on this side with the things that Spencer's not necessarily bothered about.
Yeah.
But don't touch that.
Yeah.
Because that's why he's here. That's why he's staying here. Okay. Question 2. What challenges and or frustrations can I help you overcome?
I like that question because it's not accusatory. It's not like, what are you going to do? How are you going to improve? What do you see? So that's all sort of puts the onus on a lot of people. Still asking a clarifying question, but now it's sort of saying, tell me where your problems are. You've told me about what you enjoy, what the part of your job that you enjoy. Now I want to know, where are your pinch points, where are your friction points? What are the things that aren't necessarily a big deal breaker, but you know, those things that just you roll your eyes and go, really? It's just those things. Do you remember when we talk about challenge state and threat state?
Yeah.
And on the graphic, we talk about that life, and then we talk about everyday life.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got life, which is low stress, low control, and then you have a moderate level of stress and a moderate level of control. It's these things that aren't necessarily a big thing, but you just don't need them right now.
Yeah. Would be avoided.
Yeah.
Would like to be avoided. So if it is some of those challenges and frustrations, then it's me working with you to actually go, right, okay then. Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
That cannot be thrown in. I'm hearing you. Are you hearing me, or are you just asking me? Is it just a lip service thing? Because again, when we talk about psychological safety, we talk about integrity, we talk about trust and things like that. I trust that you're hearing me. In other words, you're either going to address it or you're going to tell me why you can't address it. But it's going to be one of those two things.
And if it is that we are addressing it, then there's an actions that come with that, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. So it might not be in the moment.
Yeah.
It might not be that well, I can solve that for you, or I can help you, or I can advise you, or I could give you this. It might be a case of, I've got to take that away and I've got to think about it, and I've got to talk to other people. So it's not a case of you are on the hook. You've asked me a question, I've given you an answer, you've got to come back at me straight away. It may not be that. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you've got a solution to that particular friction point, and it's all ready to go, then absolutely fine. The chances are it may not necessarily be the friction point, but it may be that person's interpretation. of a friction point.
Yeah. And I think that's there's the advice monsters from Michael van Geestanje
Absolutely.
that can really help you with that and listening to the full points and what people are saying. Question 3 then. I like this question because it does go a little bit deeper for people that are thinking, oh, this is all a little bit airy-fairy at the moment. But what about this? What would you love to learn to help you grow?
Right. So we're back on the investing in our people now.
Okay.
Which is really good because that question that you just asked me there was not me. The question was not, what do you want to learn to do your job better, to be more productive, to be more valued?
What's going to make you come to work on time?
Yeah. It's not. That's not that. It's. Yeah. But repeat the question again.
So, what would you love to learn to help you grow?
So it's growth. This isn't performance, although growth will, I'm sure, contribute to performance, won't it?
Well, without making assumptions, I know that.
Yeah.
Well, we would suggest the organisation that does deliver quite a lot of leading yourself and workshops.
Yeah,
would be, if you're investing in yourself, then what are you learning? What are the things that you grow? What are the things that you're considering now? Now you've just opened your mind up to an experience, whether it be a one-to-one coaching session with me or yourself, Spencer, or whether it's some of the detail that we get into on all of the 6 pillars of leadership. Whatever those things are, what is it that you'd love to learn? I think if there's anybody listening now and just thinking, right, and even interested in the concept of stay interviews, and you might have done it in one-to-ones, you might have asked some of these questions before. Well, think about the answer to that question number 3. So what would you love to learn to help you grow? And then, without making the assumption, ask it and then listen. Because I've just found out there, live on the podcast, is that Spencer's there, and that's the reason why he's done it. That's the reason why you've stayed curious for that particular subject, that particular time, that effort, to actually go and do something that you want to do.
Yeah.
The number of times, and this is, and I ask this question in most of the workshops, especially when it comes to leading others. Have you tried solving a problem that was the problem that you thought was the one that needed solving, but it actually wasn't? Because the number of people that we speak to that have gone, well, we've done loads of development with this part of the organisation, this part of the service, and it just doesn't seem to be landing. Right, well, is it because you're trying to solve a problem or develop a person in some way that they don't actually want to be developed in?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure in your time as a deliverer of knowledge, in various guises, we've been in situations where we've been in a room where somebody doesn't want to be there. Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are a sausage, but it may very well mean that actually I don't feel comfortable learning in this environment. What I would much rather be doing is throwing myself off a mountain, or just doing something that is not sat in a room.
Yeah, anything else.
Anything else but sat in a room.
Yeah.
And this is not critical of what we do, obviously.
No.
This is a case of, you know what, some people tread their own path.
Yeah.
And we've got to be aware of that. Just because they're different, it doesn't mean to say they're wrong. So again, when we start learning about growth, it may very well be that, you know what, I'd like to climb a mountain.
Yeah. If it is, and it comes back to, we talk about this organisational funding, and we've got some good examples of where we've seen what good looks like. So some of the organisations that, again, if it is, and I know I was given the opportunity, one of the organisations that I worked at before T2, who's turned around and said, "What if there was a qualification? We'll offer you X amount of money to go and do the qualification. We're not saying we're going to fund it all, but we'll put this towards it. We'll help you to go and achieve it, as long as you can provide the detail and the impact that it could potentially have for this organisation. More than happy to help."
Yeah.
And I was like, that'll do.
Yeah.
That'll do for me. Because I was in the middle of a qualification, and I thought, yeah, that works for me. That's what I'd actually love to learn about to help me grow.
Yeah.
And then as a consequence, I think it was about 4 months later, qualification done. And now the return on investment was then brilliant. Let me educate you, Spencer, on what we did through this workshop, what I've gone from this course, and that I feel is beneficial for you guys in this organisation. Win-win, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Win-win.
Now,
Love it.
is there any bigger examples of that?
No. I think along similar lines, there's been a few organisations we've had the pleasure of working with who've changed the policy. So now that where they were prepared to fund such that were directly impacting on your particular role and job. So let's say that you did a particular role or job. If there was a qualification out there that enhanced that, but it was a direct enhancement, then they would fund it. You obviously had to justify it. A subtle change in words. Now it's, does it benefit the organisation? So you could be in one area of the organisation, have an interest in another area of the organisation, get a qualification or something that positively influences the whole organisation or elements of that organisation, they'll fund it. So now you're not funneled into one particular, one sort of specialisation. You could do anything. As long as it benefited the organisation. So now people are like, whoa, thinking outside the box. What can I study? What can I get a qualification? What can I do a course on that actually is going to be different? Yeah, it's going to help the organisation in a different way.
Yeah.
Something that we haven't tried. So real sort of challenging and quite sort of imaginative.
I think it just gets you to think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And imagine being that person that sat in that stay interview and going, wow, Spence is on point today. He's asking me some really questions that now my head's hurting. And I'm now in a position where I'm now going forward. I'm challenging myself with what I want to grow with and learn about. I've also been asked to think about some of the challenges and frustrations. And then actually, where do I sit in from an enjoyment perspective in the role that I'm currently doing?
Yeah.
Question 4.
Before we get on to question 4, just thinking about when you're starting to talk about these different people doing different things and being imaginative.
Yeah.
I was hill walking the other day, and I was sat down enjoying my sandwiches, and and started talking to these people. And one of the guys was same age as me, actually, or around about same age as me. Well, he was then, not today.
Not today.
But yeah. So I said, what do you do? And he was saying, well, that's quite an interesting question because I've recently started a new position. All right, okay. He says, so was it a chartered accountant?
Okay.
35 years, maybe a bit longer. And then he decided that he wanted to be a drone operator for a search and rescue team.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, yeah,
changing tack.
Well, yeah. I mean, the search and rescue thing. Yeah, okay. If you're leaving, you sort of a point where you want to change what you're doing. Might come to that point in your life, and you want to do search and rescue. Well, yeah, it's like the drone operator thing, and I'm thinking, wow, that's a job I would never have thought of. I never said they're going, I want to be a drone operator.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Can you imagine somebody turning round with fire and rescue service or the police or search and rescue and going, I'd like to learn how to fly a drone. And somebody goes, how can that be of benefit to the organisation? But somebody's got to go first, haven't they?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to turn round and go, I've got this idea. Oh, hi. And a word that you mentioned earlier on about curiosity, flipping back to my particular situation, I find that when I'm drying up, when I'm losing my curiosity, I'm not in a necessarily a good place. And that when I'm reading books and it's not in me, it's like a lack of curiosity.
Yeah.
What's going on? Where's this going? And I love that feeling, that curiosity. And when I don't have it, it can be quite disappointing.
Question 4.
Yeah.
1 to 10. 1 being the least, 10 being the most.
Yeah.
How fulfilled, a word that we've alluded to already in this podcast.
Yeah.
How fulfilled are you in your role?
Right. So this is quite nice because we're familiar with a book by Bungistania.
Yeah.
How to Work with Almost Anyone. Okay. Yeah. So it's a great book, a really, really nice book. I'm big fan of it. But one of the things he's talking about when you're actually going to be talking to other people, and there's going to be 5 questions that you're going to ask them, and one of them is going to be, what does you look like in a good place? So what fulfills you? Now, it goes deeper than that, but it doesn't go too deep. So what he's basically saying is, if I'm going to ask you a question about what fulfills you about your job, I'm not asking you what you're good at, because what I'm asking you is what you feel fulfilled by. And it's a really, really subtle difference, but it is a significant one, because there are things that you're good at in your job that don't necessarily fulfill you.
Yeah.
And if you're turning around to somebody and say, well, I'm really good at this, this, and this, and they're hearing, well, this, and this fulfills me, they're going to give you loads of that. So when we start thinking about rating from a fulfillment perspective, we're not asking you, are you good at your job? What, on a scale to 1 to 10, what do you rate yourself as being good at your job? It's what fulfills you.
Yeah.
So you might sort of refer back to those negotiables and non-negotiables. It might be that they're in a fine balance situation. So it may very well be, I'm 5 because actually I'm not fulfilled, but I'm not unfulfilled. I don't feel like I'm being fulfilled, but I'm not compromised either.
So I get that. I get that the balance between, all right, it's not the best job in the world. I'm living on a beach in Marbella,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But what it might be is if I'm asking you that question, Spencer, and you say 5,
Yeah.
okay, what are the things, or what is the one thing that you can change to just notch that up to a 6?
Right. Now then. Okay.
And I'm not saying you are a fan, by the way, and it's not good or bad or indifferent. It's the way that you feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
But if you are looking at somebody that says 8, right? What's the if you're saying 8, tell me about what's the one thing that you can change to just notch that up to either an 8.1 or whatever.
Yeah.
That it's about the next step.
Yeah.
We had a great conversation as we were walking for lunch around, well, what is fulfillment point of view? What are the things that we notch up?
Yeah.
What are the things, and we're just talking about the podcast, and it's just like, well, how could we add value? What are the things that we could maybe do to make us a little bit more fulfilled in our roles?
Yeah.
And then thinking about that question, well, it takes longer, doesn't it? It's not snap. One day you've had a great day, snap. Yeah, it's horrendous today, and the person that you've got at home gets a lot of it. It's whether it's the dog, it's a partner, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But my point is that everybody has that sort of internal narrative that they'll talk to.
Yeah.
Am I having a good day? Have I had a good day? Have I had a bad day? Has the weather been nice or has it been not so great?
Yeah.
Can I do what I need to do? Have I been able to achieve some of the things that I'm actually motivated to go and achieve? Have I enjoyed the day? Has everybody got on? Have I been able to make a decision? All of these different things and more, by the way, that could tie into how fulfilled you are feeling within your role.
Yeah.
And there's also, as a point of that, is the things that would potentially prevent you from feeling fulfilled within your role. And what else? This is from his first book. From
an earlier book,
The Coaching Habit.
Yeah. I know the example that we give there is by 1 point. How can I notch it up by 1 point? But I think it's relative. I think it's notching it up in any way, shape or form. Yeah. So it might be 0.1, 0.5, might be 0.3, whatever it is. Anything notching up is better than notching down. So yeah, it may very well be that it's not a question with one answer. So again, with and what else, and what else, and what else, and again in the coaching habit, it's usually. The context it's used in there is the 7 questions in the coaching relationship, following the first question, which is how can I help you? What seems to be the problem, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's based on the concept that the first thing out of somebody's mouth isn't necessarily the problem.
Yeah.
So that's why you keep hitting them with the and what else, and what else, and what else, because when people start thinking and they realise that actually that first thing that I said is a symptom of a problem, and as I work it down and work it down and work it down, actually I get to identify what truly is the problem there.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about how we're going to notch that fulfillment up, the first person who comes out might turn around and go, siesta. I want to be able to go and have a sleep for half an hour in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Is that going to make you fulfilled, or is that going to make you happy?
Every second Thursday of the month, I want another £15 in my wages.
Yeah.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, and I want a speedboat.
Yeah.
And I want this, and I want, yeah. So again, that first thing that comes out of your mouth, it might be something that's in the front of your brain. It might be one thing but if we keep hammering that and going, and what else, and what else, and what else, actually we'll probably come to something that is truly something that is fulfilling, or has the capacity to be fulfilling, or it may very well be a solution to a pinch point.
There you go. Because I was thinking when you're talking about the balance of fulfillment and thinking about that balance, well, if it is that we remove some of the potential barriers or frustrations or challenges, please refer back to question 2, by
Yeah,
the way,
yeah.
then that could be the bit that fulfills us a little bit more, makes us feel a little bit more fulfilled within our role.
Sure.
Okay. Question 5. In line with your company goal, and this is where we mentioned this a couple of times,
Yeah.
what could or what would you stop doing and what would you start doing?
Right. Okay.
Because it's as these stay interviews, and you are talking from either from a service or a organisation, whether you work public sector or private, it's still a similar conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what would you stop doing then?
So when we start talking about what you're going to stop doing, we're looking at something that's constructively critical. Yeah.
Yep.
So it may very well be that something is happening in the organisation, whether it's in your team or on a project that you're doing, and there is maybe you're just not making that connection. Why are we doing this? And I don't necessarily mean the whole thing. It might be some small thing. It might be a quirk that your line manager has added that the wider organisation isn't aware of, or a certain thing that you've got to do in a certain way, and it just doesn't make sense. So when we start talking about what we stop doing, you might turn around and say, well, that for a start. And everybody might go, what's that? I've not seen that. I'm not. So it may very well be that something's been added along the way that doesn't make sense. So it may very well be that you get an opportunity to listen to somebody who has got the best of intentions. Remember, this is a person who's staying. This isn't somebody who's threatening to leave. This isn't somebody that's holding you over a barrel or sort of trying to negotiate something. This is a person who stays, and their honest answer is potentially something that's going to be, you know what, if I could get rid of anything, it'd be this. Because this particular thing, you know what, it's the bane of my life. You might not be aware of it. And it's like, all right, why do we do that? So when we start talking about, it's like having a stop, start, continue.
Correct.
But for you as an employee talking to a line manager or a supervisor or whatever, so you turn around and say, "What if you were running that company for the day? What would you stop doing?" You might identify something that somebody else hasn't noticed, or somebody has noticed but just accepts.
Yeah, and I think it's then the opposite of that, and you just touched on it there. Is what would you start doing?
Yeah.
So there's things that obviously we'll use a stop, start, and continue. But if it is that we're saying no to this, well, what can we now say yes to? And I think even from a perspective of things that serve you well, things that you work with, things that actually from what's going to keep you at the organisation, what's going to allow you to stay. What are the things that are then going to turn that notch up a little bit? And you can make links to the other points. So I think great when you see it in the times gone by where, and again, there is so many historic organisations, if you like, that have done the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and it's been very well received. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But then is there really the difference between why we do it? Question 6. What is one thing I could do to be a better leader for you?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you were getting a little bit passionate about that.
Yeah, because I think of this in a number of different levels.
Yeah.
Because if we are doing this and immersing ourselves in stay interviews, I am looking all directions. I am asking the questions that I want to ask. I am getting into the detail that I need to with the person that I need to have this from a stakeholder perspective. And I need to tell you this, Spencer, and thank you very much for allowing me the time to do so. But let's start thinking of, right, if I'm trying to get a message up through whoever I report into, or somebody's trying to get their message and having that be communicated through me, well, that then impacts the teams. If you think about the full organisation, when we start to have these stay interviews on a long-term basis, and now as a cultural aspect, me as leader making that decision for you to put these stay interviews in, you then go, you're listening. You're not just listening to me, you've heard me and you've actioned something from it as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And then finally, just as a reporting strategy, and it comes back to what you do with the exit interviews. What do you do with that detail? Well, the impact on not just your relationships and the people that are directly in your influence, but people in the wider audience, people that you have an influence on, but not necessarily just based on the words that come out of your mouth. There is a process in place. it's not that something will happen. It's that there is a consideration for it.
Yeah,
There's a difference, isn't there?
but it all comes from the same place. So if there's a problem, if you identify something that could improve, right? I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but it might be an improvement. Something works.
Innovation.
But actually, if we innovate this, actually, we're going to get more return of investment. We're going to get more use out of a certain material, whatever that looks like. If you feed that to me, it is incumbent on me to feed it or address it if it's not a case of being fed up. So if it's something that's my responsibility, there's two things I need to do there. I either address the problem and consider your suggestion, or I tell you why I can't.
Okay.
Right? So this is the thing. When we're talking about effective communication, 3 elements of effective communication is transmit, receive, and understand. Yeah? If any of those 3 elements are missing, then the communication isn't going to be effective. So if you come to me and you have the psychological safety to turn around to me and say, Spence, I've seen this thing, I don't like it. Or, I've seen this thing, I think we can make improvements. If you've got the psychological safety to do that, then it is incumbent on me to treat that with respect. So I either turn around and go, you know what? Absolutely, you're right there. And that solution that you suggested, again, can't fault it. Let us implement that. Or let us consider implementing that after do what we've got to do. But that's bob on. However, there may be a very good reason why we don't do that.
It costs £1 million.
It may very well be. So it is incumbent on me to turn around and go, you know what, James, I hear what you're saying. I absolutely recognise that. However, the costs we're not able to absorb those costs at the moment. Yeah? You might not like the answer, but you will be eternally grateful that you got it. Yeah? Even though it's not something you want to hear, we know there are organisations out there that don't want to give that negative feedback, that reply. I don't want to tell you can't have it, so I'm not going to speak to you at all. And this causes a vacuum of information, yeah? And when there's a vacuum of information, it gets filled by a negative, disruptive influencer. Now you get distractions and you get rumour and you get speculation because nobody was prepared to give you that. So now you've got a load of unhappy. If I turn round to you and say, sorry, you can't have that, you're not liking that you can't have it, but you're eternally grateful that I was honest enough to give you that. I respect you enough to give you that answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Definite sense. Okay. So they're our 6 questions out of the Spencer.
Yeah, they are.
So I think we've gone into enough detail around all of them so that hopefully everybody can see the flow of what links to what, how that then impacts the communication going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously if there's something that can have an even bigger impact, perfect. Let's see what we can do with this.
Yeah.
Is it that we could change an organisational culture by, I'm not saying it has to be all 6 questions, but there is a rationale to have all 6 in.
Right, so this is the thing. When we say it doesn't have to be all 6 questions, there's a temptation there for somebody to look at those 6 questions and go, I'm not going to like the answer to that, so I won't ask it.
Right.
And then we start thinking about the compromise between being listened to and being heard.
Okay.
Yeah. So it may very well be that I'm listened to because my people, my organisation ask me questions in surveys and assessments and questionnaires, but they are hand-picked questions. So now you're asking questions that you've got a pretty good idea you're going to get favourable answers to. Whereas things like that last one, what can I do to help you? Well, if you're an ineffective leader and you know you're an ineffective leader,
that's
you're going to miss
a bit thirsty. In that.
So I'm not going to ask it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to ask it. So now, and this is the thing, is number 3. So the third point. So the first point was about why we do it and who we do it with.
Yeah.
Second one was the questions you ask. Third point that we're making now is what do you do with the answers? So again, if you're asking the loaded questions, you're only going to get answers that support your thing. Do you watch TV on occasion? Are you aware of something called advertisements? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Shampoo.
L'Oreal.
Well, there are
other brands available.
Yeah. However, when we're talking about certain shampoos and conditioners and things like that, if you read the small print, it's like 75% of 104 people asked and tested, blah, 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 said that this would. Well, and you're like trying to do the mental arithmetic of going, what is 74% of 100? So now what we're looking at is 60 people said they would rather use this than nothing. Yeah, and so you basically you're using statistics and you're using answers. You know what? Okay, I'm asking my people on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are we to how great are we? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So okay, so now people are going to disengage from the questionnaires. People are going to disengage from all these attempts to engage, and now you're getting this. It isn't connecting. So now it's people are stood there. They're in psychological volatility, but nobody's going to listen. Yeah, and now we're getting disillusionment. So when you ask people open questions and act on their answers, and this is the thing, those people feel valued and heard. Yeah, and when we say act on the answers, it's like we said before. I'll either take that and work on it and give you some feedback, or I'll tell you why I can't do it because actually the costs are exorbitant, or we can't absorb these costs or whatever. So we're still acting on it. Maybe we're not doing what you want them to do because again, some things we can't do, but we're acting on it. So they feel valued, they feel heard. This makes them more loyal, committed. Morale and productivity is increased, as does psychological safety. Trust, honesty is more visceral. It's pure. Have you ever been in a situation where you've worked for a line manager? It may be that you're so distanced from the senior leadership team or the executive leadership team that you can't even see through the clouds to them. But you don't actually work for them, you work for your line manager, and you would run through walls for that person. Yeah? This is what we're talking about here. Trust and honesty is visceral. It's actually, you know what, I'm gonna go down on my sword for this. I'm gonna fall under my shield because actually I feel I'm heard. And again, when we're talking about psychological safety, it's just absolute. And if you're thinking, if you're listening to this, dear listener or subscriber, we love you, by the way. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, how can I improve psychological safety? Maybe ask some difficult questions. And when I say difficult questions, I don't mean of them. I mean of the organisation, of the way we go about business, maybe. Because you know what? We've talked about this. Stay interviews. Why are certain people staying? Why are certain people going? The people that go, you know what? You're going to get the good news from them on exit interviews. Whereas the people who stay, well, give them a say. Why are they staying? Those 6 questions that we just talked about, absolutely valid. Use as many of them, if not all of them, as you can. And again, I think one of the things that James sort of alluded to was it might be formal, it might be in one-to-ones, it might be in proper constructed stay interviews, or it may very well be on a casual basis. And fine, everything going all right. You don't seem too happy about that. So what can we talk about? And then 3, when you get that intelligence, when you get those answers, what are you going to do with them? Because if you don't like them, there's a temptation to throw them and just ignore them. Or actually what you could do is you could act on them and people can see that you're acting them and people are sort of going, right, actually, we could make a fist of this. We could actually do things. We could turn things around. So those are the 3 elements that we're talking about. And I'm hoping that actually that made a bit of sense. I'm hoping everybody's got. Do you enjoy that, James?
I've got the 6 questions I'm going to be using, and be prepared, everybody at T2, because you will be getting hit by a couple of these questions. Going, yeah, but what would you love to learn about? To help you grow. And I've asked a couple of people, and it's an interesting because it gets people thinking. I think from a curiosity point of view, is it that we just need to do the same thing over and over again? Well, it might be in some situations, but is there a reason why we're doing it? Does that null and void some of the challenges and the frustrations? Well, if you don't ask the questions, you will never get the answers.
James Cooper, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Spencer.
And to everybody out there, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to share it with us. Make sure you're listening to the People Performance Podcast for updates on everything T2. Remember, we've still got a couple of months to our leadership retreat down in the Grove. It's going to be May. So you snooze, you lose. Get yourself in there. But other than that, thank you very much for taking the time. James, thank you for your contributions. This is me, Spencer. I'll see you next time on the People Performance Podcast.